All right, we're going to get down to business, guys. We're going to go over writing an offer. I'm going to get comfortable, get my hair out of my way, because I'm about to show you what the contract looks like in Pennsylvania. How is it? Is it good enough? All right. Here we go. It's 14 pages, and we're going to go kind of quickly through each page so that you know what you're doing when your realtor says, hey, do you guys want to write an offer? This is what they're talking about. Page 1, mostly informational. Top section talks about who the buyer is and who the seller is, and this section talks about who the realtors involved are. The second page talks about kind of like the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes of what you're offering. You're going to put in here how much you want to offer, and then you're going to also mention how much of a good faith deposit you want to give. The good faith deposit is the first money pretty much that will come out of your pocket. That is due. Now, again, this is the Pennsylvania contract, so keep that in mind. That is due within 5 days of going under contract. That's kind of like your spit and handshake that you do want to move forward in good faith with the purchase of this house. You can get it back if one of the contingencies in the contract does not work out in your favor and you walk away during the allotted timelines. You do not get it back if you walk away because you've gotten cold feet. You know, let's say your work wants to relocate you and they're going to give you a really sweet deal and they're going to build you a house. You're probably going to come to me and be like, hey, Nick, we don't want that house anymore. And we don't really care if we lose our good faith deposit. And I'm going to say, okay, no problem. And then the seller is going to keep that little bit of money. The amount that this good faith deposit is normally a minimum of 1% of your purchase price. So if you're buying a $300,000 house, you want to put a bare minimum down for your good faith deposit of $3,000. The more you give, the more serious of a buyer you appear to be, because the seller knows you're probably not going to walk away just because you got cold feet, because you don't want to lose that money. I should also mention that a good faith deposit can also be called earnest money or escrow money, just so you know. You're also going to put in here if you are asking the seller to pay for your buyer agent for your own representation. You can also ask for seller's assistance. That is when you ask the seller to help you pay your closing costs. You are also going to enter in here when you want to settle. For a cash deal, normally a minimum of 2 weeks. For conventional and pretty much all of the other government-backed loans at this point, 30 days is pretty much what they need. Sometimes that you have a lender that can close a lot faster. Sometimes you have lenders that need a little more time. But 30 to 60 days is pretty standard for closing on a loan. You don't really want to go past 60 days because when you go under contract, your lender will lock in your interest rate. And normally that rate lock is only good for 60 days. If you have to go beyond that, you might have to pay like a hefty amount of money to relock. Just something to think about. And then down here is where you're going to enter when you want your response by, because you don't want to leave this open-ended. If the seller is going to ignore your offer, you want to be able to shop for other houses, and you do not want to be in a situation where you have 2 offers on the table for 2 different properties. You don't want to do that. So normally we put in here like the following day. Like if I'm writing this offer on the 28th, I'm going to submit it to the listing agent on the 28th, probably going to put the 29th in here. But you can narrow this down as tight as you want. If you say it's 9 a.m. and you're writing an offer and you're saying, I want my answer by 5 p.m., you can put the 28th by 5 p.m. in here if you want to. I don't normally recommend it, but you can do it. You could give them a week, whatever you want. You're going to put it in there. Page 3. This is where we enter what type of zoning the property has. We're going to also enter if there's anything in the house that you want to stay with the house. There's a whole list here that is already written in there. The stove's automatically going to stay. The dishwasher's automatically going to stay. There's a whole bunch of stuff. It's called fixtures. Anything that's basically affixed to the house. If it's nailed down, screwed in, it should stay with the house. But washer, dryer, refrigerator, those are the 3 oddballs that do not automatically stay with the house. So if those items are in the house and you want those things to stay with the house, we write them in. Or let's say they have a refrigerator, washer, and dryer and they're disgusting, or you already have ones that you really, really like. We can literally exclude them so that the current owner has to take them with them, whatever. And then down here, we start to talk about financing. This is where it gets juicy. And if you happen to have an FHA loan or a VA loan, we're going to put the purchase price in there. Page 4. This is where we're going to put the details of your loan. So again, if you are FHA, we're going to mark that you do in fact know what an FHA loan is and that you understand that for your protection, you should get a home inspection. This right here is very, very important to the seller. They are going to be told by this section how you're going to pay for the house. If you are paying cash, we are going to waive the mortgage contingency. You can also waive this if you are getting a mortgage, but it doesn't normally happen. So let's pretend you're getting a mortgage. We are electing a mortgage contingency. And then on this line, we are going to put a date, which is normally at a minimum 1 week before settlement, but sometimes you can tighten that down more. That is when the seller is going to get a letter from your lender. It's called a commitment letter saying that, yep, we're good to go. We're going to give this person this house, as long as they do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes they don't even have to do X, Y, and Z anymore, but that's what that date would be. This is where we actually put the terms of your mortgage. What type of mortgage you have, how much you're putting down, who's your lender, what's your interest rate. And to protect you guys as buyers, let's say your interest rate is 6.25. We can cap it. We can say, even half a point. We can go up to 6.75. We can put that in this line here and say, if interest rates skyrocket before you get locked down and under contract, let's say it takes a couple days to negotiate this contract, and interest rates have skyrocketed up to like 10%. You no longer have to buy the house. This is giving you an out. So as long as they fall within this 6.25 and 6.75, if we're sticking with this example, you don't have to buy the house. You still can. Absolutely, you can still buy it, but you don't have to. Buy. There's not a whole lot on this page that we really need to talk about aside from we're going to we're going to choose what the house currently has as far as water and septic. Does it have public water, public sewer, or does it have an on-lot septic system? Does it have a well? That's what we're marking here. 6. This is where we're going to mark if the property has anything special going on. Like let's say it's in the Clean and Green program, which we have in PA. I'm not 100% sure if they have that in other states, but if you live on 10 or more acres, or if you're purchasing a property that's 10 or more acres, you can have it entered into the Clean and Green program and you pay a lot less in taxes. But that's what we're doing up here. The bottom of page 6 talks about the Internet of Things. Very bizarre title, but I'll tell you what it is. If you're buying a house that has, let's say, a Nest thermostat or a Ring camera, and those things are going to transfer with the house, the seller is going to clear the data, clear it. So essentially, you are purchasing those items along with the house in a state where their information is not still saved in those items. Page 7. This is really, really juicy. This is where you're going to elect or waive any inspections you may or may not want to do. In the past couple of years, almost everything was being waived. Prior to that, almost every time people were electing a home inspection and a wood infestation inspection. Wood infestation is a long way of saying termite, but it also checks for boar bees and things like that. These down here, deeds, restrictions, and zoning, that would be, you would want to check that. Let's say you were purchasing a house and you wanted to have a hair salon in it. You'd want to check that one to ensure that you could, in fact, have a hair salon in the property that you're buying. So it's giving you a little time to check that. Water service. If you're buying a house that has a well, you might want to check that if you want to have the well water checked out before you officially commit. Radon. Radon is a odorless, colorless gas that can be pretty common in some areas of Pennsylvania. It emanates up from the ground and can come into your basement and seep into the rest of your house. about 50% of the population feels it can cause lung cancer, and then the other 50% thinks maybe it's a bunch of hooey. I don't know, up to you. So if you're concerned about radon, you can have your home inspector set a test and test it for radon. If it comes back above 4 picoliters, I forget, above 4, then you can ask the seller to put a radon mitigation system in, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's about $100 to test for it at the time of a home inspection, and then to mitigate for it, it's usually a minimum of $1,000. It depends on how bad it is. If you are a little bit worried, but you really don't want to make it a contingency in the contract, you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy a kit and do it yourself after you own it. Those are a lot cheaper. I think they're like $20. And you can test it yourself. But then you know that if it does come back high, then it's on you to foot the bill to put the mitigation system in. Page 8, more juice, more inspections. On-lot sewage, if it has a septic system, you should probably test it. You should have someone come check that septic system, because septic systems can be very expensive to replace. If you're buying a house that has public sewer, you can skip that one. Property and flood insurance. If you're concerned that the property, that you're not going to be able to afford the homeowner's insurance, or if it may or may not have flood insurance, you can have some time to look into that. Property boundaries. If you're really concerned about where the boundary lines are, you can do a survey. It is expensive to do a survey, but it's an option. Lead-based paint. If the house you're purchasing was born before 1978, it's probably going to have lead-based paint. It just probably is. So my advice, rather than testing for lead-based paint on a house that you are purchasing that is built before 1978, rather than testing, if you are really genuinely concerned about a house with lead-based paint, don't buy anything that's old. Buy something that was born after 1978. Just if you're really worried about it. But you can do it if you want. If you want to elect it and test, go ahead. But I'm telling you, there's probably going to be lead-based paint under several layers of paint on anything that was built before 1978. And then down here, we have the option to add something else. That could be, if the house has a pool and you want to have somebody come check the pool out. Or if you're buying a house in a city and it was built in 1900 and the sewer lines are super duper 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 old, you can hire someone to come in and scope the pipes and be sure they're not like all rotted. There's no tree roots running through them, something like that. Just whatever you're thinking that you really need to test for, you can add that here. And then whatever you selected, you're going to initial on the elected side. Or if you don't care, or you're not worried about it, or you really want the house and you're competing, you're probably going to be marking waived. Page 9. Out of those inspections that you may have elected, it's written right into the contract that you have 10 days to get them done and respond to the seller, whether or not you are good with the house, you're taking it as is, or you're walking away because you're like, oh my gosh, this house is in terrible shape, I don't want it anymore. Or you could say, Mr. Seller, I'm going to ask that you fix ABC, X, Y, and Z for me. And then the rest of this is laying out the time frames as far as how much time the seller has to respond to, as far as whether or not they are going to fix ABC, X, Y, and Z. They may say, no, we're not doing any of it. Or they may say, okay, great, we'll do it all. Or they might say, we will only do A, B, and Y, and we'll be sure to have it done before settlement. Or they could say, how about we just give you a credit? We got some quotes. We see it's going to cost about this much. How about we just knock that amount off the cost of the house? So it's just essentially another time period where you're doing some negotiating. If you decide that you don't want the house anymore because the inspections freaked you out, then you can walk away as long as you're within the allotted timelines. So as long as you're within that 10 days, you can say, you know what, we changed our mind, and you get your good faith deposit back. If you are outside of that window, no dice. Down here, titles, surveys, and costs. In Pennsylvania, real estate is transferred by title, not by survey. So you will hire, with the help of your realtor normally, a title company, and they will search the property back 60 years to be sure that you own it free and clear. They will also issue you a title insurance policy so that you are protected during your ownership and then when you go to sell it. Page 10. The most important thing on here is the bottom where it says notices, assessments, and municipal requirements. It is a mouthful, but all it means is when you are essentially on the hook to buy a house and you're under contract for it, if that current seller gets a letter from the township that says, I don't know, we're putting new sidewalks in and you have to pay for it as the seller has to let you know because that could affect your pocketbook. Or let's say they already know about something. Let's say they have a septic system and public sewers come into town and they know there's a $12,000 bill looming, say that's going to be happening in the spring and they know they're going to have to pay for that. Well, if it's your house by spring, you're going to have to pay for it. So essentially, it's just about the seller keeping us in the loop about what's going on. Page 11. On this page is where we would mark if it's part of a planned community or if it's condominium, because there's different things that have to happen if that's the case. And at the bottom, where it says maintenance and risk of loss, essentially the seller needs to maintain the property in the condition that you saw it when you saw it during your showing. It's their responsibility to maintain it until settlement. After settlement, it's your turn to maintain it. This page talks about home warranties. Sometimes a seller will offer to buy you a home warranty, or you can choose to purchase a home warranty yourself, or you can say, no, thank you. That is when you purchase a home warranty from a third-party company, and they range, I suppose you could get one for as little as like $300, but normally they're about $600 a year, and then you can add other things to them. But that $600 is going to get your heating, cooling, plumbing, and electricity covered. So the example that I use is if you buy a house in the spring and the heat is not running, the first time you go to turn the heat on after you've moved in, if it doesn't work, you can call the home warranty company. You pay a service fee, like a copay, normally about $100, $125. Then the home warranty company sends a vendor out from their preferred list. You pay that $100, $125. They fix whatever's wrong. And if they can't fix it, like let's say you need a new furnace, then they're going to give you a certain portion towards the purchase of the new furnace. It can save you a bunch of money, or it can just be like a little safety net that you know you have in the back of your mind in case something does go wrong within that first year. It does not work in emergency circumstances. So like let's say your plumbing explodes and the house is flooding because the bathroom sink is exploding. You don't want to call the home warranty company in that circumstance because it takes a couple days for that person to come out. Just fix it. You will not get reimbursed from the home warranty company, but sometimes you just have to take things into your own hands as a homeowner and fix things. But if it's something you can wait on, like if it's not super cold yet and you turn the heat on and you can power through for a day or two, call the home warranty company. It'll save you money. Another important thing on page 12, at the bottom, it talks about default, termination, and return of deposit. As I said earlier, the way you get your good faith deposit back is if one of your contingencies does not work out within its allotted timeline. But if you just get cold feet and you change your mind and you are not within one of your allotted timelines for one of your contingencies and you decide you are officially walking away, you are going to lose your good faith deposit. The seller is entitled to keep it. If you have walked away and it's because you got cold feet or whatever, you just walked away, but it is not due to one of your contingencies, this box right here is checked saying that the seller is limited to keeping your good faith deposit. They can't come after you for more for lost marketing time. Super important that that box is checked. If your realtor forgets, be sure you're looking and say, oh, hey, can you please check that box? And they'll check it. We made it to the last page, page 14. It hasn't been so bad yet, has it? It's okay. This is where you would elect any special addendums that you are, addenda, that you are attaching to the contract. If you had to sell your house first, you would check that it's contingent on the sale and settlement of your house. If you're attaching an appraisal contingency, you're going to attach that there. Mostly if you're using a conventional loan, that is when you would have one of those. An appraisal is necessary if you're using a government-backed loan, no matter what. Or let's say you were competing and you were attaching an escalation addendum. That is when you say, we will pay up to a certain amount by a certain increment, and that form stays with your offer when the listing agent is presenting all the competing offers. So let's say, again, you're purchasing a $300,000 house. That's the listing price. And let's say your offer is for $300,000, but you know you'll pay $350,000. You can attach an escalation addendum to your offer that says we are willing to pay up to $350,000 by increments of, $2,500. You don't want to do $1,000. Everybody does $1,000, and it's not meaningful enough. Trust me on this one. We will beat any other offer that is in the room by $2,500 up to $350,000. So it's just a nice way that you can, have a teammate in the room when the listing agent is going over the offers with the seller. I digress. And then down here, you will be initialing all 4 of these boxes. First one is saying that you did go over a consumer notice. I talked a little bit about that in my buyer consultation video. You have seen a cost sheet from your agent and or lender telling you how much this house is going to cost you per month and out of pocket. You do understand that you're going to give a good faith deposit. And if the house is built before 1978, it might have lead-based paint. And you're not going to chew on it or lick the walls or let your kids do that. And then you're going to sign and date. And that's it, kids. That's the whole 14-page contract in Pennsylvania. Let me know if you have questions. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Or let me know if you have any requests on other information or questions or topics you would like me to cover. Okay, bye.